this is Randall W. Hansen. I usually put silly minute music videos on here and have fun and stuff. But just kind of off the cuff, I've been doing a lot of witnessing on Twitter. I'm just a lay person. I do have a BA in biology. I was trained in taught evolution as a fact in school, which I resented very much. And I even admit I didn't want to believe that, so I looked for evidence the other way. But I couldn't see where that was a fact at all. And just briefly, geologic timetable was invented about 1840, 1850 with Charles Lyell and Charles Darwin. You read that, a lot of his ideas came out of that. And basically they wanted to get rid of the Bible because they hated God in the Bible through it, especially Lyell. And he got this idea that the rocks were laid down over millions of years real slow. Before that time, scientists believed in a worldwide flood. And all fossils are found in sedimentary rocks, which are laid down by water. The only real explanation for fossil formation is it laid down rapidly in water. It doesn't happen slow. You can't stick a fish in the lake and it just becomes a fossil like that unless it's very fast. And a good example of the buffalo that died off here about 100 years ago or so. They don't make fossils. Their bones just quickly gone. They're gone, and it happens to fish in the ocean now. But in the fossil record, there's just these huge fossil graveyards. They can't explain coal formation other than it was not in some swamp in a peat bog. And basically, it was all washed into place because there's a lot of things where there's boulders that are within the roots, and it doesn't have a soil profile just sitting there. It was obviously washed into place. There's Dr. Steve Ross, a lot of evidence of that. Mount St. Helens, things happened there afterwards over the canyon cut real fast, and the layers were laid down fast. It doesn't take millions of years, it just takes a lot of water in a little short time. The Grand Canyon was not cut out for that little river slowly meandering through there, because in fact, first place where the river comes in there, it's too high altitude. You had people went uphill to get there to initially cut it, and it was cut out by water flowing real rapid, and there's no delta to it. Which where all the sediment go out, washed out a long time ago. There was a giant lake that broke, Lake Bonneville they call it, one of the lakes, and it broke and cut that thing out fast. And 12 of the geologic time, so-called ages, only about 5 of them are actually there, and they're in the wrong order, some of them. And there's these nautilid creatures that are kind of like a little bit like an octopus, except they got a long cone on them. They're about 6, 8, 10 feet long. Some of them, there's a whole bunch of those that are buried. They're all in one direction, like laid down by water. You can go into detail of that. There's all kinds of things like this, so I'm not going into all the detail of this. But I'm just going to make a little, briefly to point people, I'm sharing some things on Twitter and my Facebook. I think it's a crime that evolution taught us a fact. You don't have to believe that. And it's not a fact. You can believe everything in your scripture. Genesis 1:1 is totally accurate. And there's a book right here. I tried to put this out to Iowa Lakes. It's called Censored Science, The Suppressed Evidence by a great guy named Bruce Malone. And he presents things like this. He has shows like a student here. And science has been redefined to say that if you can't explain something naturally, then it's not scientific. In other words, you got to kick God out. And the only explanation for everything that way creation is natural process. Well, you know what? Natural processes really don't work. There's only really 2 explanations for how we got here. You can either believe a spinning dot blew up and here we are, or Darwin's idea, natural selection. But it doesn't work because in the biological world, just briefly, things are within a kind, like a cow kind, a dog kind, a cat kind. There's a lot of variation, especially dogs. There's a lot of genetic diversity. But there's still a kind, and Darwin knew nothing about Mendelian genetics whatsoever. Just so happens the Russians outlawed Mendelian genetics because they knew it disproved evolution. Evolution is part of their faith because they have to be atheists and that damn communism and stuff. So just to brief that. But this book, like it shows a girl, her brain is she's not being allowed to see the contrary evidence. A lot of people that think evolution is a fact, it's not a fact. You've just been brainwashed. And our public institutions are teaching a secular humanist religion, which is really unconstitutional. And it goes in and has different sections of different things. Oh my it has different things about different geologic formations and different pages about every subject you want to think of in science, just briefly. But it goes in detail and has a skeptic's corner where it says what they would say about it. And there's a lot of evidence of like folded mountains or folded rocks. They had to have been folded soft or they couldn't be there. They couldn't fold in a hard condition. Another thing that's interesting is what they call overthrust, like the whole so-called Lewis overthrust out there in Montana, where it's 100 and some miles across and 3 miles deep. And supposedly that big rock went over, slid over the other rock. The only reason they say that is because there's a younger so-called age laying on top of the older age. I don't even bother to tell you the exact so-called ages of those. Those age name things were invented way back. It's only found in the textbook. The real world, there's no one place on Earth. There's more than about 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And a lot of times they're not in the right order. A lot of times fossils aren't that way anyway. They don't even tell you things like there have been modern birds found in with dinosaurs. There's 12 human skeletons found in the so-called Cretaceous strata out there in Montana. And I put a video on there, Dr. Don Patton. There's 12, and it's where they were mining copper, and it turned the bones green. They call it the malachite man for that reason. It was a whole family of people. It was really hard stone that was laid down. It was in there, and it was not a cave in, and there's no evidence of that whatsoever. It was just laid down there at the same time dinosaurs were. But they wouldn't admit that. There's all these footprints. Ones they claim were fake or carved. Some of them maybe were, most of them were not. There's all kind of evidence of that. One of my favorites is there was a guy named William Meister, was a rock hound out in Utah. He was an atheist, by the way. And he went right up the side of these tall mountains out in Utah. And he liked to collect trilobite fossils. Trilobite was a lamb that looks like kind of like a little saw bug, except it's different varying size. Some are about this big and some are real small. But embedded in a human sandal print were some squished trilobites. And that's supposed to be like at least 500 million years before we evolved, or even here. So right away, all that so-called history just disappeared. And the guy became a Christian after that. So, I mean, there's just a few things. My own car, I have an iron pot, a replica of one that was found in a lump of coal. And it's all affidavit. The guy broke it open to use it in their stove, and here this iron pot fell out. Now, I don't think some creature in Carboniferous period, like 350 million years ago, made that, And they found dinosaur footprints in their coalesced, and they're supposed to be even later than that, so that don't fit. And supposedly bees didn't evolve before flowering plants did, which is stupid. And the whole thing about bees and just the bees themselves, the way they do that dance, they lead other bees to where the flowers are to make the honey. Just everything you look at is designed. And a lot of scientists have written books like Michael Behe and Philip Johnson and Darwin's Black Box and Darwin on Trial, books like that. It's not a fact. That's just a fun point I'm making. So something like your eternal destiny, why do you want to believe somebody just one side of an issue, which is so bad in this country? You can go to Russia and teach creation science now. You can't do it. You can, and teachers can do that, but you try to outlaw that. They don't want to hear the other way. You should look at this video by Ben Stein called Expelled. It's excellent, where he shows about different people that had tenure just because they doubted Darwinian theory, or they believed there was a creator God, or there might be a creator God, but they were ostracized, and there's a lot of that in our society. But if it was such a fact, you couldn't have science like Kurt Wise, who's a paleontologist. And once he got tenured, he'd come out and say he's a creationist. And he's with Astrogenesis quite a bit. Dr. Steve Austin. And Henry Morris's boys run the Institute of Creation Research. Look them up. ICR.org, I believe it is. Look up www.evolution/facts.org, and they put out this book. And their website, they have way more than just this. But this book here, the Evolution Handbook or the Evolution Cruncher, it's got more facts you could ever imagine in there. And it quotes themselves from evolutionists and across the board. And a lot of people, they just assume, they don't know one area of science, they just assume, well, evolution has been proven years ago. No, it hasn't. There's no fossil There's no missing links. There should be millions of missing links. There should be half this, half that running around. Now, there should be nascent organs that are halfway developing into something. But really, the fossils are one of the best things. You should read the Genesis Flood by Wickham and Morris. Tremendous book. Now there's a lot of new ones about the flood that have been updated by Dr. Morris and other people. And I read it from off the top of my head. Just do this a little bit at the top of my head. But I just want to make a statement here. Get people witness that they should look up some of these things. This book here, I read, and I reread this book. And don't go tell me, well, you haven't heard the other side, because I have heard the other side. I've been to school. I was a biology major. Frankly, I don't want to waste my time with Chris. We got no evidence at all. I mean, there's no evidence of anything. Big Bang and all this stuff. It's a fallacy. The Nebula hypothesis doesn't work. There's no such thing as an Oort cloud. Comets are too young. The universe is too young. There's all kinds of things that show the Earth is young. The radioactive or the magnetic field of the Earth is decaying too fast. You only go back 10,000 years, strong magnetic star would turn us apart. There's all kinds of things like that that say young Earth, the salt in the oceans. The fact that the river deltas, there's not enough stuff there if it's really that old. It only figures to be about 4,000 or 5,000 years old, which is about when the Noah's flood ended. Or things like that, you can get into it. The ice cores don't prove it's old because it goes by hot and cold summers make a lot more than one layer of ice. In fact, there was a squadron of P-38s that was landed about 43 or 4 or something up there north by Alaska up there. And they were buried under like 50 feet of ice in just a few years. So it goes by that sort of thing. Anyway, in the past, there's huge catastrophes that happen. We're bringing some of these facts up. And just across the board, the first law of science says nothing's not created or destroyed. The second law says nothing. As time goes on, energy is less available for work, so things wear out. Well, they try to say, well, get around the second law because it only is a closed system. Well, that's not true. This phrase, Sir Arthur Eddington, I believe it was, that said that time's arrow always goes down. And he said nobody will ever get away from the second law of thermodynamics. It applies to everything. And what you can, and the energy from the sun, you can get away from that. No, you can't, because you have to control the energy. Genetics and living things, they have to have a way to control and harness that energy to make something go against the second law temporarily. You can do that with. That's why a baby can grow and so forth. But still, over time, you still age and die right now. You can't get over that loss, so you can't really get past it. And evolution goes totally against it. And the third, which is a law, is called biogenesis. And I was sitting there in Mankato State, right in the big classroom. We're taught that. About ready, people thought flies could just come out of rotting rags. Oh, yeah, they just come out of there. Oh, they had to be laid by another fly. And Louis Pasteur, in his special flask he had with that curve in it, so dust couldn't get all the way down in, and so no organisms could get to that. It's still, my last understanding is, still sitting in the museum over in France over there. Nothing ever grew in it, even though it's not refrigerated, because no germs could get to it. So it proved that germs only come from other living germs. So the point was, he proved but the law, they say that's the law, biogenesis. Life only comes from pre-existing life, and yet they tell you that, you teach that as a fact, and they turn right around and tell you abiogenesis could happen from soup and chemicals. And that Miller thing was a joke, it didn't really prove nothing. I don't have to be a total expert on that, but you can look up a book by a guy named David Kopedge, where he said evolution possible or impossible. And one of the big things, and that's really interesting, is that all living things only use the left-handed amino acids or the proteins, not the right. And if it's a chance to make, it's just a racemic mixture where it's 50-50. How you get where living things only use the left-handed ones. Thank God has a good sense of humor there. They use the left-handed things to show evolutionists that that's a big joke. The only reason not to believe God is because you don't want to, like Romans says, in Romans 1:18-25. Willingly, and also it says in 2 Peter chapter 3 that they're willingly ignorant that God made the water in the water, and I had a canopy up there, and then that there was a giant flood that flooded the earth. The earth being cataclysm with water perished. It says actually literally in Greek, to my understanding. And those floods real. That's what laid the water down. And if you think that's stupid or something, it was like a huge barge, and the average animal was like the size of a sheep, and even dinosaurs were on there, and they were smaller ones. They took young ones. You didn't take big monstrous things. And that's another thing. They lived way longer. Why they got so big? Because before the flood, people could live to be 1,000 years old in Scripture. And because we had some kind of canopy, and Dr. Carly Ball thinks it was like this pink frozen matrix from the hydrogen up there. He might be right, I don't know, but a lot of people disagree with that. But it was something like that. The Earth was way different. It was one big continent. It never got real cold. We proved that by at the poles. There's these frozen plants and animals are up there. The tropical things are frozen under that ice. And, you know, it was buried there. And the ice age is one big ice age after the flood, because 10,000 volcanoes went off. A big sea broke around the Earth and shot water up. Some people, Dr. Walter Brown, who's got excellent books on creation, he believes that that actually the meteorites from the Earth are coming back at us now. They blew up and shot out in space then. But this water shot up and froze all the mammoths and all that stuff. And anyway, it was a huge catastrophe anyway that went around the Earth. It was no minor thing. Some of these sci-fi movies I saw one the other day was probably pretty close to the truth, was showing how the world was all breaking up and people made these 3 big arcs, and made me think about, hey, the real thing. I think that was something that was similar to that anyway. But the point I'm mostly making is everybody should at least look up the case for creation. Look up a guy named Trey Smith. His videos are terrific. He's on YouTube. He's a young fella. He's an interesting guy. He got a book one time. He stole the safe at one time with his phony evangelists. There's some Christians that are phony. I had to say that, but and he got a whole book about that. But he became a born-again Christian after that, and he's quite smart. And he's got really great videos. He talks a lot about the Nephilim, the giants that possibly bred with humans to make all those strange creatures and giants before the flood. And that could be the reason why God did flood the world, because our whole genetics were screwed up except for Noah's family. I think maybe that's true, although some people think that was just one family. Humans were evil, and the ones with Cain and the other ones weren't, you know, with Seth and that. But I think maybe that's true. And also, like these UFO things, those little green things are supposedly the gray-skinned ones or whatever. Those are probably fallen angels and that. They really are for real. They're not really from outer space, and that's a bunch of bunk, because that Star Trek's fun. I like Star Wars for fun, but the reality of it is pretty far-fetched. You can't even figure out how you could ever travel like that, and it's a made-up thing. It's all based on evolution, which is wrong. Even if something like that is just, it would have to be made by God too, because life can't come about by chance process. And the Earth is right in the center of the whole universe, I'll tell you that. And there's one spot out there in the space where it's empty, and the book of Job talks about there's an empty spot on the north. I'm not verifying all this stuff. I could sit down there, just making a quickie thing right now, but I've read all these things, studied them, I'm just making a quick thing for fun. And got my Bible out there. Well, you can look up quotes from actual evolutionists themselves where they admit that the fossil record does not really show that. There's no transitional forms in reality at all. One guy who said he didn't know anything about it. I was going to look I didn't really write all those down to look them up, but this book here covers a lot of that stuff. Basically, I just was going to have a little fun and just get some people to thinking about it a little bit. Just check these things out. And look up Answers in Genesis Ministries. I forget the exact website, but it's Answers in Genesis. You put it in. Look up a guy named Buddy Davis. Look up his videos. He's terrific. I'm going to sing you about 3 of his songs a cappella just for fun here. One of them I like about this is what I believe is more scientific than anything else out there. It's about God making the world. It's right in the book of Genesis. On day 1, God's own Son created the heavens and the earth. He said, let there be light, and it was done. That's what happened on day 1. On day 2, out of the blue, God made the atmosphere. He divided the waters, put them under and above, and God did it with love. It's true. Day 2. On day 3, out of the sea, the dry land appeared. God made fish to swim and the birds, no. Oh, I got Bill blocked. I got to have to start over here. On day 3, out of the sea, made the dry land appear. Oh, I got a Bill block. Let's start over. Put it on pause. Oh, damn, I screwed up. Here. Here, pause this.